it's interesting on what people think the real estate business is versus what it takes to become, I'll just say, like what you see on TV or what you see on TikTok or Instagram all the time. And so, the number I wrote down, I'm like, I've done hundreds of these appointments, and I wrote down the top 3 things that we get from people that want to go into the real estate business. The number one thing I get, which I almost laugh out loud every time that I get this, and that is freedom of schedule. And so the reason John's laughing at me already, because he's known me for a long time. And so there's a difference between your freedom to schedule things and freedom of schedule.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, because what happens is, that is something where what people mean by that is, well, it'd be nice not to be tied to a desk from 8 to 5 if they've worked a job like that or worked in a shop or production or manufacturing. And so what they don't realize in those situations is that in general, to hit the levels of success that you need to, you might be working, you might not have to work exactly between those hours of 8 to 5, but you might end up working a lot more hours than the 40 hours that you were working.
Yeah.
Or it never fails that you will have, 0 showings for 2 days. And the best way to guarantee you're going to get a showing is schedule a family event.
Yeah.
Schedule
weekends.
Schedule an evening dinner or a date night with your wife or going to a 4-year-old's birthday party. And you will literally be in the car on the way there, and your phone will ring with somebody that's like, hey, I just saw your sign. I was wondering if I could go see this house. And so, you end up having to, you actually lose some of that, flexibility that you had in the past. Now, I will say, yes, you can schedule things and you can schedule around things, but it is in general, I tell people, it is probably less flexible than you think it'll be. The number 2 thing that we hear from a lot of people is compensation. So there's been numerous studies the last couple of years about real estate agents. On average, depending upon which study you read, the first 1 to 3 years in the business, you're going to make under $50,000 a year.
Yep.
Until you build up your pipeline of leads and business. And then the third thing that I hear most often from new people getting into the business is that I love property. I love looking at houses. Now, I will say, you have to have that as a foundation.
Yeah.
Number one, like if you don't like the product, don't try to sell it. It will be very, very difficult. But if you believe in home ownership, you like looking at houses, you like looking at interior decorating, that type of stuff, it is a great foundation to build upon, but you will be shocked how little you actually use that part of the business, because you might love certain types of property and things you're looking for. That is not what your client is looking for. And that is not always what will be in their budget. And so you have to have some flexibility and some versatility in that situation. So, but those are the top 3 reasons that we see what drives people into the industry. And I will say, the thing about the real estate industry is the barrier to entry is pretty low. So you in Washington State, the requirements are you have to be 18 years old. You have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. And then you have to take a 90-hour pre-licensing course. 60 hours of that are what are called real estate fundamentals, and 30 hours are what's called real estate practices. And then you pass the state test. And then what I tell people is then once you pass the state test, you are required to then hang your license at a brokerage to become a practicing real estate agent. And what I tell most people is that once you have passed that state test and you have hung your license at a brokerage, you are absolutely qualified to do nothing. Okay. Like I don't want like that. Like we are at like the bare minimum, but it's scary because like, I mean, yes, there's oversight that's required. So one of the good things that Washington State did a number of years ago is that they put into play that if you've been in the business 2 years or less, you have to have a managing broker sign off, review, and initial your deals. Massive change that was very helpful because there's a lot of mistakes that could be made with likely most people's largest asset. So we're going to talk about what it takes moving forward once you do have your license, what you need to look for in a brokerage that you're going to. Some of the things that Lance says to potential people that want to be realtors that I probably shouldn't say. Like my wife is like, you need to tone it down a little bit, okay? When you're talking to people that want to go into the real estate business. So I say things like to people, like you have to have a thick skin in this business.
Oh, yeah.
So now that you have your license, I always tell people, be prepared to lose friends and get your feelings hurt. Because one of the things that we talked about, like I told John, like when you finish the licensing course, you don't know anything. You know, like the book smarts of the fundamentals of what it's going to take to sell real estate. You don't know how to use all the forms, though. You haven't been through the legal classes with those. So most of your friends and family will avoid using you for the first 2 years until you know what the hell you're doing. Like, and so I usually tell people this, and then somebody's kicking me under the table. And so you look and say, well, how do I overcome that, Lance? Like, what are the different options out there? So I always tell people, and John and I were even talking about this in relation to the radio show.
Yeah.
Like you've got, and your job as a radio host, John, like you've got to find a way to get reps. Okay. So what do I mean by that? Get reps. Well, you've got to find a way to go through some contracts and see what it does take to close a deal. So what does that mean? You could potentially be an assistant to another agent that's been in the business a long time. You could work as a closing coordinator in an office that does a lot of transactions. You could work as a listing coordinator, learn what it's like to take pictures of a property, market a property. You could work in property management or an adjacent real estate adjacent type role. You could train with a photographer as an assistant. So there's a lot of these different paths that you can look at. You could go to work on a team. So with Kenmore Team, we have a team set up where people have very specific roles. A lot of those ones I just mentioned. So you could go with a team and then you could get reps where you have somebody walking beside you, mentoring you on these deals, showing you how to do the paperwork, helping you get that set up. So when you're interviewing for a brokerage that you want to be at, you want to pay attention to who's going to be teaching me those things, how do they get financially compensated to do that, and what does that look like? So a few other warnings that I throw out there for people is that you will show thousands of houses. So one of the things we did talk about is one of the biggest reasons I hear people come to me is I love property, right? And I'm like, good, I hope you do, because you are going to show thousands of homes. You are going to show homes that are dirty. You are going to show homes, it's 100 degrees out right now. You're going to show homes that are 115 degrees because they were vacant and the owner didn't want to pay the electricity bill, so left the AC off. You're gonna potentially be chased by dogs and wasps because no one's been there maintaining, so there's all of these things where it's not as romantic as selling Sunset, or $1 million listing. There are times where we do get to see beautiful high-end homes, but at the same time, there are plenty of times where it's the previous that I just described. The other thing about it is when you get your license, it allows you to sell property, to help people buy and sell property. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't teach you how to grow a predictable business with predictable income, because That's another skill, right? Is trying to determine how many people do I have to talk to? How many deals do I have to do to create a steady type of income? Because a lot of times people will say to me, they'll come to me and want to go in the business. And the very first thing that I tell them is, do you have, we always talk about Dave Ramsey's, methods and theories as well. And we say, do you have a 6-month savings account?
Yeah.
So where you can support yourself for 6 months with zero income coming in on this business. And that gets tricky, right? Because if someone is new or younger, or they haven't established that, that's a difficult thing, but it's also very, very realistic, because you might work for 1 to 2 months procuring new clients, new leads, working different methods to get clients. And then you get a client, then you spend another month finding them a house. Mm-hmm. And then it takes 1 to 2 months to close that house. So you might not see a paycheck for 6 months, and you have to either have a lot of support or be in a position to where you can make that. It makes it way, way easier to have some sort of setup where you have that situation going. Now, once you get past that 3-year mark, everything changes in general with the real estate business, because now you've sold, let's say you sold 5 the first year, 10 the second year, another 10. Now you've sold 25 to 30 homes. You have some reps. You also have, if you do a great job, 25 to 30 raving fans out there telling all their friends and family about you. So invariably, instead of starting from scratch to try to sell 5 homes, if you have those 30 people talking about you all year long about how great you are, you should automatically just wake up and that 4th year and have 5 or 6 referrals that you're going to sell homes to. So the process starts to change. And then if you get really, really old like me, you can see how those things like snowball to where then you've sold hundreds and then thousands. And then those raving fans are then referring, thousands as well. So it can get really, really good, but there's going to be a very difficult time period that first 3 years. So
yes.
I talk to agents about that, what that looks like. Nothing makes me happier to see agents go through this transition, hit that 3-year mark, start having huge amounts of success, and then roll that into a 10, 15, 20-year career in the business. One of our big things is helping team members put that together, supporting them to get to that point, and then dealing with the crazy along the way.
Yeah.
Because they say moving is like the number 2 or 3 most stressful thing. You're taking your whole life where all your stuff is, where everything you function with is, you're putting it all in boxes, getting it away from you, and then trying to deal with life. They say like behind like death of a family member, moving ranks like second, or divorce, moving ranks like 3rd on that list.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So how do people react in situations like that are a big deal? Not their best moments. And so then you're dealing with that fallout. And that's what we get paid to do. So those are the sides of the business I always like to point out to people. If you're thinking about going into the real estate business or making a switch from one firm to another firm, I would love to talk to you about that. Go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot me a message. Let's see how we can be successful together.
And we'll be right back here next week on News Talk 870. I did it.